Good morning, Austin.
Hey, Dad.
How you doing, bud?
Good. I'm doing well.
Excited for a new guest this week. This is going to be a fun one. And today our journey takes us to the Glass City, Toledo, Ohio, home of Toledo Tom. 30 plus years, Coach Stutz has graced the sideline of Rocket football. His accolades speak for themselves. Hall of Fame inductee, third winningest coach in school history, 2 MAC championships, and 4 bowl appearances. But this is a much deeper story about history buff, a collector, a cook, sportsman, messenger of the gospel, and a lover of life. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. And alongside me today is my son, Austin Karcher. And today we'd like to welcome Toledo Tom as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Hi, Coach Stutz. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How are you, Ken? It's great to see you in Austin.
Well, we're so excited you're here. And let's just get right into it, Coach. And let's go all the way back to when you were just a little guy and you were growing up in the Amstutz home. Tell us about family, brothers, sisters, if you had them.
Yep. Well, I lived in a pretty simple growing up. I had one sister who was 5 years younger than me, who was just close enough to be an irritant at all times. And I had a really solid father who was a former basketball player and a guy that inspired me to want to get into coaching. And then a mother who could do a lot of things. She had a lot of talent. She graduated from college and she was a sharp lady with many talents. So I grew up in a very happy and good home.
Where did your dad go to school and he played hoops, you said?
He played for the University of Toledo his freshman year. He then joined the service and played in Germany. And he actually played against the Harlem Globetrotters in Munich, Germany, in the Olympic Stadium, which at that time was the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest crowd to ever see a basketball game. Oh, wow. He then played for the Washington Generals against the Harlem Globetrotters for a summer when he got back. So
that's awesome.
It was kind of interesting. He had some very unique friends, Curly Neal and some of those guys. He knew them.
I remember all those. I loved the Harlem Globetrotters. They were great.
Yeah, well, he was on that Washington General team, the team that never won. He was on that team.
That's awesome. So, Stutz, when you look back, growing up in the Amstutz home, how did the home environment inspire or influence who you've become?
Well, sports was always a big part of it. My dad, like I mentioned, he loves sports. He helped me, train me to pitch for Little League and had me go out and play basketball for hours. And he knew that would be something that would be important in my life as it was in his. So he was a real positive role model. And, I understood how, that hard work and training for sports could make a difference in someone's life. So that was an influence. And then my mother was just very sharp and on top of every little thing. She was a real go-getter that inspired me. So that combination sort of trained me to be a coach for the future.
Do you have a funny story maybe between you and your younger sister?
I was spraying her with a hose one day, and apparently she finally grew tired of it and went in and told on me, and I had to sit out for quite a while. We have many stories like that.
Awesome. Coach, obviously your dad, you said, inspired your love for sports. Was he also the same one who inspired your love for football, or was there anyone else who really influenced or led you down that specific path?
I just think it was, a process of elimination. I was, in baseball, I was a pitcher, but not 100-mile-an-hour pitcher. In basketball, I was, 6'2", not really a power forward. So it came down to football that I could. That was, my best sport that I could contribute the most, and that's where
Awesome.
I fit in.
Awesome, Coach. What was maybe a memorable conversation or moment that you've had with your dad?
I remember one time at a baseball practice, we used to I was watching this kid who never could hit a ball. He just was a struggle. It was not natural for him. And he practiced all year long. And finally, in one of the last games of the year, he got up and he got a hit. And my dad said, that's what coaches do. They never give up on a person. They always are there for them, and they can make a miracle happen. Wow. And, that can change a young man's life if you stick with them and help a guy. And right then, I was 9 years old, and I said, well, I want to be a coach. And I remember that distinctly.
Well, that's a great story. That's definitely one to, that really puts the power of what a coach does. Absolutely. Yeah. Coach, what do you have a favorite childhood memory?
I would say it would be fishing up in the summertime up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, catching northern pike. And I had about 10 cousins that were all like wild animals, and we'd go out fishing and riding motorcycles and just create havoc. And that was probably my great memories of growing up.
Awesome.
I don't know why it doesn't seem strange, Stutz, the little that I do know you, to think that you would be part of causing havoc.
Yeah. I am trained to cause havoc.
I think you would enjoy that. That's great.
Yeah.
Stutz, what role did faith play in your home growing up?
Yeah, it was there. It was a quiet faith. It was we would go to church every Sunday. It was something that was sort of built in as part of our life. However, like things that are built in part of your life, assume some of it went over my head. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if I really had that personal faith growing up. Although I was aware of God, I would battle for God. I would stick up for doing the right thing. But yet that personal journey and the personal commitment happened as my freshman year in college.
Coach, tell us a little bit about your high school playing career, where you went to school, and some of the influences and things that inspired your athletic career.
Yeah, I went to Whitmer High School, which is the largest high school in the state of Ohio. We had 996 in my class my senior year. During graduation, these people were standing up and that I had never seen before in my life. So it was a very large school, and we were pretty successful in all of our sports. And that's where I got a chance to be noticed and get a scholarship offer to the University of Toledo by playing football at Whitmer.
What position did you play, Coach?
I was an offensive lineman. I should have been a quarterback, but they put me in offensive and defensive tackle.
Okay, awesome.
All linemen love to think they should be a quarterback. That's great.
Definitely. I am the one exception that could have been.
What were some other passions that you had, Coach, and maybe some dreams and heroes you had growing up, around that high school time?
I think, I enjoyed watching all sports, and I don't know if I really had a hero, but I looked up to the upperclassmen, the guys who were in front of me. I wanted to make sure I had leadership as good as them or better, and just knew that I had a role growing up as a player to be a leader. That was always stuck out in my mind, that I needed to be a leader on the football team, on the basketball team, and the guys that were leaders in front of me, I looked up to them and wanted to emulate them and carry on that role.
Was there a favorite high school sports memory that you had? Maybe, a game or something like that?
Well, but when I think of high school sports memories, it's not a good one, but it's a unique one.
Okay.
A guy was up on a scaffolding, changing a light bulb in the gym, and somebody tried to slide it and move it, and the whole thing toppled over, and he fell at my feet and broke his hip.
Oh my goodness.
And I drug him a little bit off the court, and the ambulance came and rescued him. I don't know why that memory was, because it happened right next to me. But that is a bizarre memory, but it's the one I have.
Well, you were a hero in that situation.
Not really. Not really.
Stutz, you mentioned getting recruited to Toledo. Do you have a recruiting story, or did you always know you were going to go there?
No, I looked at most of the Mid-American Conference schools and had opportunities to go, to sort of pick where I wanted to go. And as I had my list narrowed down, um, I went to my father, said, I'm going to pick a school now. Which one should I go to? And he said, well, where would you want to get a job? Where would you go to ask about getting a job when you were done? I said, well, probably, University of Toledo. There's more opportunities around a city than the other schools. He said, well, that answers your question. So I went to the University of Toledo for the opportunities afterwards. And
who was your coach when you were playing?
It was Jack Murphy, who was a really outstanding coach, and who was with Coach Lauterberg during the undefeated times with Chuck Ely. So he was our coach, and we had a decent program at the time, and Toledo continues to be a good program.
Yes.
What were some of the highs and lows of your college career?
I remember starting my first start as a football player my sophomore year. That was exciting. I felt like that was the moment where all that hard work finally paid off, and I got to line up in a college football game, and that was a great feeling.
Who was it against?
It was against Marshall University, the Thundering Herd.
Yeah.
And then the low moment was I watched my roommate, who was a tight end, Clinton Longnecker, catch a ball over the middle and get hit in the chin and knocked cold. And he was knocked cold for about 3 weeks. It was before protocol for head injuries. So I don't know what he had, but he was knocked out and knocked silly for about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Little different rules nowadays.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dad.
Coach, is there a moment in your college career or conversation you had with one of your coaches and maybe how it impacted you and who you are today?
I would say all the coaches, really sort of inspired me to give my best, encouraged me when I was a leader, because at times I was fairly quiet until it was time to say something, and then I would step up and say it. I think after I did that, the coaches would always pull me aside and say, that is good. We need more of that. We need more guys to stand up as leaders and be vocal. Even though that was sort of against my nature at that time, I didn't talk a lot until it needed to be said. So again, the leadership was brought up to me to be a leader. And that is something I think that carried me through sports and led me towards being a coach.
Thank you.
How would you describe your journey of faith at that time? I know you said your freshman year, but you want to give us a little insight into that?
Well, like I said, I always had a God awareness, and I knew there was a God, and I could feel him active in my life. I just didn't understand how it all was put together. I had a philosophy teacher in my senior year in high school who said there was no God. And I stood up and I said, "You're a liar and you're wrong." And I had a moment of leadership where I spoke, out of my normal character. And he sent me to the dean's office after I made my vocal approach to him. And the dean happened to be my offensive line coach, who him and I sat there and chuckled. He said, "Well, you got to pick your right fights with, you can't be fighting with teachers." And I said, "Well, he's hurting people. He's, saying a lie. Because I know there is a God. If there's a universe like this, there has to be a creator. And if there's a creator, that's my Lord." And he said, "Well, you just got to pick your time and the way you say it." But that moment made me say, when I go to college, I'm going to find out if there is a God, how this God works, how this is going to apply to me. I want this to be personal for me, so I understand it. And then I got back to campus and was invited to a Campus Crusade for Christ, a football meeting up in Michigan. I wasn't sure if I was going to go or not until they said free food. So I said, I'm there. And I went there and I met Chuck Heater. You guys know Chuck?
Yes.
great football coach and was a player at Michigan. He was there, and my roommate and I went, and I got a little booklet called The Four Spiritual Laws. I went through that, and I said, "Oh, this is a personal thing." And I finally understood that this is a personal relationship, not just stuff to memorize, not just a philosophy class. This is a personal relationship. Yeah. And that's the first time I really understood that, and took it back to the campus, accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, made sure my roommate did, talked him into it. And then the two of us had a Bible study with 32 football players. I had no idea what I was talking about, but we just posted it and took turns leading it. We just went through the book of John with 32 football players that year. And again, that's how it started.
Isn't it amazing that I think that's the way Papa likes it, when we really don't know much and we have to depend on him to deliver the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. We were definitely dependent on him. We would read it and say, okay, you get it? I kind of get it. I get this part. Well, you do that part. I'll do this part. And we just depended on God to do it. We knew we had to be leaders of this. And again, that leadership quality was being called on me all my life to be a leader. And so that's how we started. I went home and shared the gospel with my family, and they already said, well, we already knew this. I said, well, I didn't. You didn't make it clear to me. And then, began right there with our football team, having a Bible study, and boom, off and running.
That's a beautiful story. And I think it's really cool because, you can see, obviously you end up being a fantastic leader as a coach, but you can see little, in your story already, you see traces of, where you step up. You like you said, you were quiet, but then when you felt compelled, you spoke up. And there's no doubt that, God sees your leadership ability and, has been chasing after your heart because it can help, so many people because you're such a good leader.
Well, let's transition from your playing days at Toledo to now deciding to be a coach. Walk us through that, Coach Stutz, the process that you were thinking through when you're graduating, of why you wanted to become a coach and what that looked like.
Well, as I signed up for classes, I said I wanted to be in physical education because I want to be a coach. And the lady said, well, there's not many education jobs. Maybe you should try something else. I said, well, when I graduate, I'll have my choice of coaching jobs. I told her that as she looked at me with funny eyes. And I knew I wanted to be a coach, like I said, since 9 years old. Went into physical education. I graduated on time because I was told to do that in 4 years. And then I applied for a job in the inner city of Toledo and a job out in the country outside of Toledo. I was offered both of those jobs. I went back to the University of Toledo to ask the coach which one of those jobs he thought I should take because I wanted to get into college coaching soon. He said, well, I think you should take neither one of them. I'll hire you as a graduate assistant and you can coach here when you're ready. And 9 months later, he offered me a job at University of Toledo, even before the season started. I went from player to the next season full-time coach, and I was coaching the guy I had played next to the year before. So his name was Gary Zolchek. I said, get your feet moving, Zolchek. And he said, well, you didn't last year. So I'm the coach this year, you're going to do it. So it was very interesting. Going from player to coach that fast. Yeah. And, but I enjoyed it.
Awesome. So Stutz so now you're at Toledo, you're a GA, and then you end up becoming a position coach. What positions did you coach? What were some of those early challenges as a young coach?
Yeah, I was an offensive. I coached on the offensive line, the tackles and tight ends. And I just loved it. As far as challenges, I was so young that the players sometimes forgot that I was no longer a player and was now a coach. So I had to, be a little feisty on that one and get after them. And but I loved it. I felt like this is where I wanted to be and where I was made to do this. And I had that feeling that this is not working. This is something I love, and just dove in head first. And I was at the University of Toledo for 20 years coaching. and then went to the Naval Academy for 4 seasons. Then came back to Toledo again and coached again.
Why'd you go to Navy, Stutz? Why'd you leave and go to Navy?
Well, I only applied for one other job in that whole 20 years. I was not the coach that looked to move around. I just love being a soldier, coaching, and I had applied to one job, and that was I applied to the University of Michigan to be an assistant coach there. Lloyd Card called me back and said, I'm hiring one of my former coaches that is coming back, but I'm recommending you to Elliot Uzelak, who's going to be the new head coach at Navy, and he wants you. So he called me up and offered me the job. I didn't really apply to the Navy, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to grow in the profession. After 20 years, I said, now I'm ready for leadership. I want to be a coordinator. I want to be a head coach.
So Stutz, most people do not have an experience of being involved with an academy. Talk to our listeners a little bit about what was your experience like at the Naval Academy as a coach, maybe as compared to when you were at Toledo.
Yeah, really interesting guys to work with there. They are so sharp, so intelligent, and such high quality young men. And what they're doing is something that's also unselfish. They're preparing to get a degree and then be leaders in our armed forces. That takes a special young man, and I really enjoyed working with them. Their strengths were more so academically and mentally, and less so as football players and athletes. So that was there's a give and take there. And I used to call them the dumbest smart guys in America because they couldn't line up in a certain way or whatever. And I don't know if I was really academy material, but I was coach material. But it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed the recruiting for the academies. The young men that were willing to know that 5 years they're going to be serving their country, and their life could be put on the line, and yet they were willing to do that, and it was a great experience.
So did you come back to Toledo from Navy to be a defensive coordinator? Is that what brought you back?
Yeah, I came back. We beat Army, and we had a new athletic director. And when there's a new athletic director, that usually means a new coach. So our coach got fired, and I was without a job. And Steve Belichick, Bill's father, was at Navy. And he said, hey, do you want to go back to Toledo? There's this guy named Nick Saban is going to be the next head coach at Toledo. I said, well, that's where that was where I've been all my life.
Never heard of him.
He made a phone call and said, well, Nick will hire you. He wants you to fly out he was coaching with the Houston Oilers. He goes, well, fly out to Houston. He wants to meet you, and you'll be on his staff. So that's how that happened. I ended up going back to Toledo with Nick Saban.
So Stutz,
what was it like working with Coach Saban?
It was like going to the dentist's office. Every day you get your teeth drilled. It's painful, but you learn a lot.
Yeah.
So it was very challenging, but very wonderful.
Obviously, living in Alabama, both Austin and I know that our listeners that will listen to this. What was the interview like with Coach Saban?
It was. I was shocked because I was prepared to line up all the defenses that I know and really ready to be academic. But he just had conversations about some of the players I coached, things I told him in different situations, and in 5 minutes he said, "Well, I want you to come and coach for me." It was shockingly different. I think he hired me before I got there through Steve Belichick's comments.
Okay.
So it was not much of an interview, but it was only getting to know me as a person kind of feel that I had.
It shows the role of relationships in this profession, that's for sure.
Again, the relationships with him and Steve Belichick, and then him and I felt very comfortable together. I got him to smile and laugh a few times, which is hard to do. And we just clicked. We clicked very well.
So, Stutz, when you look at your career as a defensive coordinator, was there one memorable victory that you can think about in that time that jumps out?
Yeah, the one of the first victories I had with Nick Saban. We played Northern Illinois, who ran option style football, much like we did at Navy. And the year before, they ran that offense against Toledo before we were there and had almost 560 yards of rushing. So our goal was to stop them. And I had the Naval Academy background of stopping option football, so I felt like I was going to be prepared for this new challenge. I got in there and we beat them about 32-7, and they only had about 200 yards rushing. And in my mind, said, well, I did a good job. Wow, this was good. This worked really good. And we stopped them, except for a few little plays here and there. Surely that won't be held against us. And we sat in the meeting. He goes, I am so embarrassed. We gave up 200 yards rushing. That's the most I've given up in my life. And right then I knew that Nick Saban had a very high standard of everything. And I went from thinking I was a hero to being a zero. And again, it's where's your standard and what do you expect out of your team?
I think I read somewhere, didn't you have a big game against Penn State at that time as well that you did real well on defense?
Yeah, I got a chance to play against Penn State when Joe Paterno was there, and that was a game plan that we put in through the summer. I studied, and our team, I brought our players in when they're there, and we had a game plan. If they didn't change their game style, that was going to beat them for sure. And I watched their first game before we played them, and I said, they're running their same stuff. Our players we worked on them every day in 2 days. We had their formations and their favorite plays down. We had calls for all those situations, and we beat Penn State at Penn State 26-6.
Oh, wow.
And that was a very thrilling game on defense and a big victory.
So,
Awesome.
Stutz, if we had a couple of your players here with us, what would they say it's like to be coached by Coach Stutz?
Well, I think they would say that I was intense. I was fiery. I tried to make it fun. I talked to them, each one of them, as men. My main coaching was off the field in one-on-one conversations about coaching about more than just football, about life, and that I encourage them even in rough situations.
Coach, how did the early years of your coaching career prepare you and help you frame your coaching philosophy and leadership style?
Ask that again.
How did the early parts of your career help you frame your coaching philosophy and leadership style?
Well, I think the leadership was developing the whole time I was there. I think the coaches that I worked for showed really good leadership and were good football coaches and good men. Nick Saban obviously has a leadership style that was different than my personality, and I think I used some of that to taper me as a better leader again, to maybe control the fun but raise the intensity.
Yeah.
And I think each of the men I work for, I learned something from, and it helped me develop as a well-rounded coach.
Now, most of your career after Nick left that 1 year, you were with Gary Pinkel. What were some of the things that Gary did that influenced your career, Coach?
Yeah, he was an excellent coach, and his organization was phenomenal. And a lot of that was he learned from Coach James, who was at Washington. And so his organizational skills were tremendous. His fire and desire to win was tremendous. And I learned a lot of good things from him. He and Coach Saban, their temperament of leadership was very similar. And, I learned a lot of good things, especially with the organization of a practice, of a schedule, of a timeline, of a calendar. Those things I learned from Gary.
Now, I mentioned it in the intro, but anybody that knows anything about Toledo football and Coach Amstutz, they're always refer to you as Toledo Tom. Where did you get that name, and did you like that name?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was I think by being there that many years, 20 years as an assistant coach, going right from player to coaching, I think everyone around the university and in the community kind of remembered me as a player. Now I'm coaching again. Now here comes a new staff. I'm still on the new staff. Here comes another head coach. I'm still on that staff. So I think it was like, I just sort of grew on the community as somebody who was always there as a player or coach, and just around.
And, you don't see that very often nowadays on people's resumes. That says a lot about you, because we both know that when a new head coach comes in, he usually clears house. So for him to keep someone like you says a lot about you, Coach. And Austin, let's jump to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of that was the recruiting I had done there. That was my strong suit, was recruiting and having relationships with players. And each new coach came in and they heard that story from players, from other people, that, hey, this is one guy that we want to be around. He coaches us hard, but yet we like him. There's something about him that we want to keep him on the staff.
Yeah. So, Coach Stutz, with that said, then let's do this for our listeners, because most listeners aren't having a chance to be recruited at a Division I school. Let's say you're working for Nick Saban, and Austin and I are two recruits that you want to get to Toledo. What was your spiel that made you a great recruiter?
Well, it was not really a spiel, and that's why I was a great recruiter. It was the relationships I would develop with you guys.
Awesome.
I would want to talk about your favorite subjects. What do you like to do? What are your hobbies? And what are you interested in studying? And what do you want to do in football? And what are your goals? So I wouldn't be telling you about Toledo. I would be finding out about you. And I would want to become a family member. I would want to become part of your family. Someone you could trust to ask about your future and to ask about, do I have a school that would fit for you? So that would be my approach, rather than me giving you a spiel.
Well said. Well said. Austin, you want to jump to the head coach's period here?
Yeah. So in 2001, you become the head coach. What was during your time as a head coach, what was the trademark or identity of a Tom Amstutz team?
Well, I think we were a very attacking team. Every year we always had a saying above the door when you leave, like most schools have some kind of a saying. Ours every year was attack. Yeah. So I wanted to be a very aggressive offense. I wanted to go for it on fourth down. I wanted to spread them out and let it fly. I wanted to have a very aggressive defense that was not afraid to blitz. I wanted to get into a punt formation and run a different play than a punt. I wanted it to be fun for the players, and I wanted it to be exciting for the fans, and I wanted to go for the win, play to win.
Coach, how did you create a structure within your organization that promoted family atmosphere?
Well, so some of the things, and I was not good at this naturally. I overlooked that a lot until I got reminders from people such as my wife. And I give her a lot of credit for this. But one of the things we did some of the years where we'd have a Sunday time where we'd have families were invited to come in Sunday at noon and bring food in there, and we would have spend some time with them. Let the kids run up and down the hallways and see their dads. We did that. We'd have Thursday night is date night. Everyone go home, go to your family. We're not having a long meeting on Thursday night. The practice is over with. Everyone get out.
It's surprising you say that, because I would have thought that came natural. The one year that I was fortunate enough to spend time on your staff, like I remember the Friday fish fries that you would do, and it seemed like that came so natural for you. That's what I loved about you.
Yeah, and that was an important thing. I think, again, even though we may have been in a hard year, that time of fellowship with each other, that always helps you be at your best when you can smile and have fellowship with your staff. That is really important, and that fellowship and the companionship will carry over onto victory. I remember the week we beat Michigan, we had, instead of practicing or doing something on a Monday or whatever, we had a big team cook. We cooked for the players and had brought in tables and had burgers and had try to make it a fun fellowship time. And I remember I heard, well, Michigan's up there practicing before the game. I said, well, let them practice. We got to get together and stay tight as a team. And that philosophy paid off as a big victory up in Ann Arbor as we beat University of Michigan in front of 107,000 people.
I'll never forget that night. That was, and then we went to your house, and and Beth had a nice party for everybody. I can still remember standing in your backyard celebrating that.
Yeah, that was wonderful, and we had a lot of good food, and we called up our favorite barbecue place, City Q. And they brought 2 loads of trucks, brought over ribs and all the fixings. It was a great time.
So,
great memories.
Yes.
So what role did faith play in your program, Coach?
Yeah. I always tell this story. My first year as a head coach, I knew that, I knew that my purpose of being a coach is not just football. I was so thankful that I knew that my job is to influence these young men beyond football into life, into faith, into being good husbands and good fathers. I knew that. So I knew that was my real role in being a coach. I knew I had to win to keep the job, but I knew that what I was doing for these young men was much more than football. I was so thankful of that. And I think back to that first year, we ended up winning a championship. I was handed a trophy. I held it up, handed it to the captain, and less than 5 minutes, the first reporter said, well, you won this year. Congratulations. How are you going to be next year? And I said, right then, my moment of being a champion was 5 minutes.
Yes.
The result of the win and that year was 5 minutes. And then they were talking about what it was going to be like next year. And I said, I'm so thankful I knew that it's more than just winning a championship that I'm coaching for. I'm coaching for these young men. I'm coaching their life. I'm coaching their faith. I'm coaching them to be responsible citizens. That's why I'm here. I was so thankful I knew that before winning a championship. And, okay, you did it. Now what are you going to be next year? That is so shallow when what I'm doing is much more important than that.
Well said.
That is well said. Wow.
Coach, what were some keys to building a winning philosophy, qualities you wanted in your coaches and players?
Well, I hired any coordinator I hired. I wanted it to be a Christian man. I wanted a Christian man to be my leader of the offense and the defense. As the head coach, I don't want to be the coach of the offense. I don't want to be the coach of the defense. I want to be the head coach. I want to look and oversee everything. I don't want to interfere with the process of putting an offensive game plan together. I don't want to interfere with the process of putting a defensive game plan together. I want to be the head coach. And that's, some coaches like that. Some have to have their hands into everything. But that was my philosophy. I wanted to help the coaches do the best job they could at coaching their players. And that was my philosophy. And I wanted to make sure they had an organized schedule, a good system. I wanted to make sure the players were going to show up and give their best. I coached effort and I coached attitude. That's my style of head coaching.
Well, and that says a lot about you, Stutz, to be secure enough in who you are, like we talked about with your faith, to be able to, delegate to men on either side of the ball or the special teams unit and know that your role is over all of it rather than, like you said, putting your hands in every little detail. One of those coordinators you hired, obviously, is what brought you and I together, Robbie Spence, who we did an earlier podcast with. And I know how much he thinks of you as well, and you think of him. But it's, that's so important of how you've been able to handle your coaches. Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to do this podcast with my son, Austin. For the last 10 years, Austin and I have had many intimate conversations on his drive home from work. Some of these father-son conversations have been lighthearted, while others have been very deep and emotional. Over the Christmas holidays, we decided to start a podcast called Awaken Kingdom Culture, where we invite our friends to share their life-changing stories with you, our listeners. This podcast is done under our nonprofit, The Win Awakening, a sports ministry network for coaches, athletes, and those who lead. Our vision is to awaken hearts and minds, one story at a time. Our mission is to encourage coaches and athletes and those who lead to live from a place of victory, regardless of success, records, or the scoreboard. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. Right in the middle of your mess, I'm reminded daily that the most important person of my day is the one in front of me, and that one matters, and that you are the one. WinAwakening.org is our website. I encourage you to visit our website where you can encounter the good news of who you are in Christ and what you already possess and how to live from it. There you'll find blogs, videos, Andrew's journal, and this podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. I'm thankful for all of you who have given and are a member of Team Win. Awaken Kingdom Culture is listener supported. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to winawakening.org. We are a nonprofit. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And please like, share, and write a review on Spotify or YouTube. Okay, it's time to get back to the podcast. Let's jump to 2008, which was the year I was fortunate enough to be hired on your staff and be a part of your team. And take us, Stutz, inside your heart and mind at the end of the 2008 season. You know, what transpires? You end up, some people would say you were fired. Some people would say you retired. Some people would say, you left mutually. What's going through your heart and mind during this process at the end of 2008, and even maybe conversations with your wife or children or a close friend?
Well, it was kind of interesting because, like I said, I had a lifetime knowing I wanted to be a coach. And I could see that now that was coming to an end. I saw that my faith was stronger than ever before. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was walking with God. I knew that I was on God's plan, whatever that was going to be. I always thought it was going to be coaching forever. But all of a sudden, this is going to end, this coaching here. I didn't really want to go coach at another school. I had other calls. In fact, Nick Saban was one of the calls. I could have gone and been an assistant coach at Alabama. But I knew that the coaching was going to be done. I was done coaching, and I was ready to do whatever God had me do. And I felt at peace about this. And I was ready and open to do what God had for me. I was excited about going home and spending time with my wife and my kids and watching them through their. My one daughter was playing basketball in college, and the other daughter was just finishing up school. So I was excited about going home, spending more time at home, and then being ready for whatever God had me do next. Mm-hmm. So it was a bittersweet, more sweet.
So what did life look like outside of football? Obviously seeing your daughter play basketball, and what was God working on? What was what were you doing at that point?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I was really kept calling out to God, God, what do you have for me to do? What do you want me to do? How can I serve you? I feel I want to give this message to Christian coaches, especially, that it's a process we go through as Christians. Mm-hmm. And I call it this process. It's what Jesus said. First one is come to him and have that personal relationship. The second phase is follow him, get a lifestyle that is his lifestyle. The third is abide in him. Everything you do should have something to do with your faith and for the kingdom. Then the last thing is go and make disciples and baptize them. So that was the journey I had been on, slowly moving along down the road and stumbling along the way. But I felt like I was now ready for the go part. So I said, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And I was invited to a prison ministry. It's called Kairos, to come and watch a ceremony and see if, they have a weekend for 26 inmates. They teach them about God's love. And then they start up a fellowship program within the prison. And there's a big state prison right in Toledo. So I was invited to that, and I said, like, okay, God, I feel something pulling on me. So I went to this, and I loved it. I'm standing in the back, and all the inmates are supposed to be on this side of the gym. They kept coming over to me to want to talk about football. And finally, the guard said, "Hey, coach, you have to go with the inmates on their side because they keep coming over here." So I was now it's me and all the inmates on one side of the gym and the visitors on the other. And I said, well, this is a natural fit. I mean, I feel comfortable with these guys. I feel like I have a new team to work with. And that's exactly what happened. I talked to the warden, came over and said, do you want to be part of our chapel services and do a Bible study? I said, yeah, I'll do it. He said, well, can you start tomorrow? 3 hours every Monday. And I said, yes. I said, yes. And that started a Bible study in the prison for 5 years in Toledo. And then I still do one every Wednesday at Hernando Correction Facility. And it's that's my new team now. I got to be a leader for somebody, and now it's inmates.
Awesome.
Guys trying to get their lives in order, and it's been a blast. I just can't tell you how rich and exciting it was. When we first got to Florida, the prison I was invited into was a prison for women. So I wasn't going to go in there alone. So my wife and I went, and we went together, and we worked with women for about 4 or 5 years, about 5 years. And then that prison changed to a men's prison. And now I'm still at that prison. So I love it.
What is it about, inmates that, really, that God has really drawn you to?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're a captive audience. I know they're going to show up for the Bible study. They don't have much of a choice, even if I do a bad one. But these guys, they're just normal guys that have chosen either they've made one dumb mistake or they've chosen a lifestyle that has led them away from God and on their own. And we have a saying, when you're down to nothing, God is up to something. So God is up to something in a lot of these guys' lives. That they tried it the way of the earth. They tried it the worldly way. They tried it the easy way. They tried it the fast way, and none of that works. And it comes down to, do you have a relationship with God? Are you trusting in Him, or do you want to do it your own way? Well, they're wearing the blue stripe down their leg. They know their own way didn't work. So now they're saying, what other way is there? And I come in and I'm the coach. And we sit down and you look at me and sit up, and here's the new way. And so I just coach them, just like I just have a new group of guys to coach. We're not playing football, but we're getting coached on life. Yeah. So I love it.
I love your heart, Stutz, and we'll continue getting deeper on that stuff in a second. But so right when you left Toledo in 2008, I think I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you do something with the alumni for a few years, or even Rocket Radio? I think you did some stuff.
Oh yeah, I call that talking funny for money. I did that for 2 seasons. I was the color guy on the radio for the football program. I enjoyed that with Mark Beyer. He's very talented at that, and I just was a color guy, and I would say things like he dove for that, like he saw a piece of pizza on the ground, stuff like that. And, so they probably wanted to fire me after 2 years, but I worked with the alumni office, and I helped raise money for their new indoor facility, something I had asked for 9 years that they couldn't raise a penny, and then they hired me to do it, and I got it done and built in 2 years. So then after that, I was all done. I had my full retirement. I had my retirement money coming in. I call it my mailbox money that comes in every month. And I was off and running. I was a free man, ready for full-time, whatever God had me do.
So obviously you mentioned that you're still coaching, but was there any point in, when you stepped away from football that you said, oh, I miss it, or, I wish I could be doing this, or ever thought about getting back in?
Well, I did a few things in football. I did lead. I was asked to lead a team to go to China for Athletes in Action.
Okay.
And it was one of those kind of things. He said, could you meet me for lunch? And I said, yes. So we're needing a head coach for a football team of college age and older to go to China to play Korea, China, Japan, and Mexico in a 10-day tournament. And it's American-style football. And are you interested in doing that? And I said, yes, I'll do it. I said, do you have a coaching staff? They said, no, you'll have to name the coaches. I said, okay, I can do that. Do you have players all lined up? No, we don't have any players. Yeah, I can do that. And then, do you have money all set aside? You go, no, we don't have any money. I said, you got the right guy. I'm going to need God to help me do this. And so I took that on, and that was really a year of commitment of putting together a football team, a staff, and finding 48 players, raising about $500,000 to have uniforms and plane ride to China and pay our sponsorships. And so that was a full-time job to go there. And what a wonderful year that was as far as coaching. And I baptized 15 players on the 50-yard line before we left. We shared our faith with every country. I had translators. We practiced with China, let our offensive line work with their offensive line, our quarterback with their quarterback. And then we had our players give their testimonies with an interpreter to the Chinese players, and the coaches, other than the head coach, ran out of the stadium as soon as you said the word Jesus. They were scared to death because it is a real thing that some countries don't allow.
Yeah.
The free use of faith and the word of Jesus is not allowed. And what a great experience that was. So I got a chance to do that. I coached was a head coach of a college all-star game with historic black players down in Florida. And I took a group of 12 guys from Athletes in Action to Italy. We put on a clinic for the Italian team. We agreed to do a free clinic if they would listen to us, share our testimonies for 1 hour after each practice. And they all agreed, and we did that. So awesome. I've done a few football things.
That's awesome. Well, this is one of the parts I was really looking forward to in this time together, Stutz, as well. And I want to just call this our time to talk about your passions. And Austin and I are going to bring up a few of them. And what I'd like you to do for our listeners is, when we talk about some of your passions, can you share with us how you experience God in the midst of your passions?
Well,
Austin, you want to ask him one?
So the first one would be fishing and hunting. How did you get started and early influences in that?
Yeah, well, that was back to my childhood when we were with all those wild cousins, and we'd jump in a boat. And I mean, I don't even know how we lived. We just took off in the lake, and the fishing was fun. We would laugh and have contests and fishing contests, and so that was an early passion, and then I got into finding some old fishing lures, and then got into collecting those. That was always been a passion and a lot of fun. Through that, I met a whole new series of people from all over the country that we like these dumb fishing lures, but yet we would now be able to have relationships and get to know each other better. So all those are things from back, like being a kid again. Getting to go collect old fishing lures and looking at them, and the hunting is always good to have a good place to talk to guys and get to know each other, and on the fishing trips. So those are just something that I grew up doing and kept doing.
Now, I think that when I looked at some of the research for our time together, you're a real history buff. And when you talk about, I think you're a member. You mentioned of a national fishing club. Is that correct? A collectors club. What is the makeup of that?
Yes, National Fishing Lure Collectors Club.
What all do you discuss when you get together?
I can pick up an old lure and I can tell you about if these are eyes that were made in Germany. Is this
Really?
what kind of hook is it? What is the swivel system? Is it is it a cup rig? Is it an L rig? I can tell you all about a fishing lure, when year it was made, 1906, 1905, all that information. All that useless information I can tell you. And that makes a difference to collectors. It's like a stamp collector telling you all about a stamp. Who cares? But yet it's part of the hobby.
Awesome. Tell us about that. It says the collector. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're someone that loves to collect, and so how many lures do you have, Stutz, of your own personal?
Well, I don't have as many as you think, but I have a high end lure. So rather than having, let's say, $300 $5 lures, I would rather have 20 $100 lures. Let's just say that for the sake. So I probably have about 300 fishing lures.
Wow.
And what are these lures made of? Do they have names?
Yeah. Well, the first lures that were made in our country were made of metal. They were mostly spinner style, and those are in the early the 1850s. They started making fishing lures, and they were all metal spinners. And then around the 1900, they started making wooden ones, a wood filled with lead that would sink under the water with 5 hooks on them, and with spinners on the front. That started around 1900, and then and that's really the era that I collect is from 1850 to about 1910. That's it. And after that, I call them new ones.
Now, how did you get? I mean, what directed you to that period, that specific time period?
They're harder to find. They're more valuable. They're more rustic and appeal more to me, and those are the ones I dove in and researched and figured out.
Wow,
it's been a lot of fun.
So, as a sportsman that loves to hunt and fish, what is your favorite fish to catch or animal to hunt?
I really like. I guess I'm on saltwater now, but I still think it was the good old northern pike or a muskie. Those are my two favorite. And growing up, we would catch the northern pike would be the ultimate trophy for a 9-year-old to catch a big old pike, and so that stuck on my mind. I really enjoyed catching a big muskie on Lake St. Clair. That was fun. And now we fish out on the Gulf, and I like to catch snook. They're really a fun fish to catch.
Awesome.
The most vicious fish I've ever caught, and that's why I knocked it out of my fun category, is a tarpon.
Really?
They will fight all day long. They will wear me out. I get done catching one, and I said, I'm done. And my wife and I went a couple years ago, and we caught 7. We boated 7 tarpon, and one day we hooked 9 and boated 7 of them. They were monsters, and I said, "That's it. I'm really not wanting to do that again." There was too much work.
So your wife?
How much does a tarpon?
Pardon?
Your wife will fish with you?
Yes, my wife is a better fisherman than I, and she beats me every time we go out. So I try to get out before she's awake, and because she outfishes me every time.
Well, I know you like to cook. What's your favorite dish to cook?
Oh, I like to get a nice steak on the grill. I love to cook steaks. I love pork tenderloins. I like anything on a grill. I just love to use a grill. I love that taste of a grill to a food, and we enjoy good cookouts.
A lot of the fish that you catch or the things you've hunted, do you cook those up too, Stutz?
Oh yeah, if you remember correctly. I would go out some mornings and shoot a goose or two, clean them and put them in marinade on my way back to the office, and put a few dozen eggs on the grill along with goose breast. I would breast out the geese and cut all the meat up and serve them for breakfast to the coaching staff. So yeah, I'll if I hunt it, if I kill it, I'll eat
it. That's awesome. Well, let's jump to legacy, Stutz. And Austin, you want to talk a little bit about their family?
Yeah, tell us about your family, your wife and your girls, and
yeah.
yeah.
Well, my wife is awesome. Like a coach's wife has to be. They have to be strong, independent, be the center of the home. And my wife did such a great job as a mother and keeping two great girls under control at all times, and knowing that I wasn't going to be there. So she raised two wonderful daughters. One daughter went on and played basketball at Indiana Wesleyan on a scholarship, and is just doing great. My other daughter went to the University of Toledo, and they're both married. One daughter lives in North Carolina. She has two boys, and I just got back from a couple of weeks ago. I watched my grandson play in his second junior high basketball game, and he did a good job and scored and played good, tough defense. I like that. So I have two grandsons by my oldest daughter and two granddaughters by Brooke, who played basketball at Indiana Wesleyan, and she lives here in Clearwater, Florida. And in fact, I watched my granddaughter play last night flag football, if you can believe it or not. So my grandsons are playing basketball. My granddaughter's playing football. Well, who would figure? So
here's the question I have for you, though, Stutz. As a grandfather myself, what's the name that the grandkids have for you and your wife? And how do you handle the sidelines as a coach when your grandkids are playing?
Well, I have strict silence. I do not say a word. I just maybe clap if they do good, but mostly nothing. And I'll talk to them afterwards and ask them, do you want me to let you know anything that I saw that could help you improve? And if they say yes, I'll tell them. If they say no, I say nothing. And I don't cheer or yell. I sit silently. And my job is to say, hey, I'm so proud of you. That you're such a good kid. That's my main job. And
awesome.
I really.
What do they call you?
Pardon?
What do they call you?
They call me Papa.
And me too.
They call Beth. They call her Grammy.
Good. Those are special titles. I know we hold close to our heart.
Yeah, they are very good titles. And yeah.
Well, Stutz, you mentioned this a little bit, but describe for our listeners what life looks like now today for Toledo Tom as you live in Florida.
Well, we got hit with a hurricane, and we got our house flooded out 2 years in a row. It's can be really devastating, especially if you don't have a faith that you know God is going to be there for you, that you trust in Him to rebuild your house or set up the situation. It can be devastating, and we had to learn to trust God with this. Tear out the walls, rebuild it, wait for the insurance money to come in. And, all those kind of things are, when you suddenly don't have a house, your life has changed. And but we found that we're trusting God day by day for things. It's and God always seems to provide just enough, just in time. We found that last year when we got done. We sat there in amazement and said, look what God did. We have a redesigned house now. Everything was taken care of, and we had so many good friends from our church come and help us. And we stayed at one person's house for 2.5 months that we didn't know before we moved to Florida, that we met in church, and they're in our community group. So God just keeps taking care of us and providing.
What has been the most significant moment in your coaching and spiritual journey?
Well, I would say it would boil down to something like this. I had a player one year that was just not doing the right things. Was what we call coaches call he was always on the list. Didn't show up for study table. Didn't turn this in. Was late for that. He was always on the list, and he did one extra thing that could have had him thrown off the team. I talked to the coaching staff about it. Most of the guys said, well, he has had enough time. He should be off the team. And I called him into the office, And I said, a lot of the coaches think you have made too many mistakes. You should be off the team. I said, but sometimes you might need us more than we need you. So I'm going to keep you on the team because I think you have a spiritual problem, not any other kind of problem. You have a spiritual problem. And this young man started crying, and he said, I do. I'm mad at God because my son or my brother drowned several years ago, and I'm been furious with God, and I can tell I'm not doing the right things, and I need to figure this out. So I assigned him to meet once a week with Rick Isaiah, who was our Fellowship of Christian Athletes guy, and go to church with him, and go to all mandatory. That he went to all team Bible studies, and his job was to let me know how he was spiritually every week. For him, he had to do that for him to stay on the team, and he did that. And several years later, he came into the office. He had graduated from the University of Toledo. While he was going to that church with Rick Isaiah, he met a girl, a good Christian girl. They got married. He had a job. He had his business degree, and he brought in a little son that looked just like him. And his life was going the way God wanted it to, because sometimes we have to know we're here not for football, but for these young men. So I would say, do it.
Awesome.
Coach Stutz, when someone spends time with you, what do you want them to experience, and how would you want to be remembered?
I would say I would want them to know that I care about them, that I believe in them, that I'm encouraging them to do their best, that I want them to work hard at whatever they're doing, and reach out and know that they can show God's love to whoever they're working with.
Well, what we do at the end, Stutz, is one of my favorite things, and that's called Final Words. And Austin and I would love to give you a chance to share whatever is on your heart, something maybe we didn't cover, something you want to say to our listeners. And then when you're finished, Austin will close with some final words, and then I'll close us up.
Well, I just wanted to, especially if there's coaches out there, young coaches that are, trying to figure out how to balance their faith with coaching, because sometimes that is a job. It's a hard job to balance when you're, getting after guys and trying to demand their best and trying to push them, and then also show the loving, patient side of God. That is a challenge, and it's a challenge in everyday living. That you want to push and do your best, and that sometimes the old self wants to come out and push and make things happen, when God is saying, "Whoa, slow it down. Love comes first. Your compassion for others comes first." That is a hard balance, and for coaching and life. And I would say, if you make a mistake, make it on the side of loving others, encouraging others, and back off on your own personal drive. To young coaches, I would give that as a message.
Wow.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, Coach, there's been so many statements that, like, little nuggets that you've had in this podcast. My dad and I have been talking about doing a year-end podcast where we kind of pull from each person, and there's probably 4 or 5 that just really hit me. The first one being when you talked about when you saw what it meant to be a coach, and just that kid who for a year couldn't figure out how to hit a baseball. And then all of a sudden, your dad pointed out that growth process, that you just be patient, you keep working, and a coach is there to help them get to the other end and see something they've worked for. But there's been so many things. But as I sit here and I listen, and just knowing the year that my dad got to spend with you, and you're a person that's very authentic and genuine, is something that pops out to me. And I can see how, as a recruiter, how you can, you weren't given a spiel. You weren't being fake. I mean, what you were doing is you were stepping into someone's life, trying to love them where they're at. And that in itself attracts. And what I've seen in my dad's life is it creates authority, not like the kind of authority that I lord over you, but the authority that what you say matters to me. And so you as a coach have created authority with, I know, so many people just in the hour that I've sat and listened, because of the way you lived your life and the way you modeled, and even how you've just seen people. Like your story about the young man who everyone said it's time to kick him off, and just seeing and hearing. My dad and I talk about, what does a kingdom coach look like? Well, he's someone that sees and he hears, not just what, is obvious to everyone else, but they see and hear the heart, where the person is. And you modeled that, Coach. And, it's interesting how God works, because, like we have our expectations of, I'm going to coach my whole life, or I'm going to do this my whole life. But, like in your wisdom, your ability to see that I'm coaching still is as I'm interacting with inmates or, the people around me I'm just taking the skills that God has given me, and I'm carrying it out. So I'm just appreciative, one, for what you meant to my father, in that year that you guys spent together. I'm also appreciative for our hour here and getting to hear your heart. And I'm just so thankful for coaches like you who, pursue the kingdom. You coach your tail off, you give your team the best chance to win, but you have a eternal focus. And I know that will be rewarded when we all meet our Creator. So thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Well, Austin stole some of my words, but first I want to say thank you, Stutz, not only for today, but, in 2008, you gave me an opportunity to get back in, because I was out for a couple of years having been fired. And it was a time that I needed in my life. And I know Papa put me with the right coach, because I've only had two in my life, and you're one of them, that I would say I would be wanting to emulate how you coach. And you always cared for the person in front of you, which is a big statement we use in our ministry here. You recognize people, as Austin said. And when people feel recognized and seen, they're at their best, because they want to be able to be a part of what you're asking them to do. And then when I think of Toledo Tom, or Coach Stutz, as I call you, and most of the coaches that work with you do, you are one of the most authentic, genuine people that I know. When I get off, my wife's going to say right away, how'd it go? And really the word that'll come to my mind, I'll tell her, is it was genuine. That's who Coach Stutz is. He's a genuine person. And as you mentioned with your wife, Beth, it's a team. Coaching is a team. And the two of you, I know this, just again, the year I was there, and people that I know that are still at Toledo or live in Toledo, you impacted that place more than you'll ever know. And so I say thank you on behalf of many people. But like I said, I have great respect for you, and am privileged to have worked for you for that just 1 year, which could have been many more years. But I look forward to our friendship as it continues. Yeah. And Austin and I would like to thank you for allowing us to share your story with our listeners today at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.